Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to welcome you here today. We've got some visiting members of Parliament who want to talk about a very important issue that touches the lives of people all over the country, but especially here in Regina. I've got my colleague Larry Brock and Arpan Khanna. Arpan is our new Shadow Minister for Justice. Larry held that role and helped craft a lot of positive Conservative policies that will make our streets and communities safer. I've also got local Member of Parliament Warren Steinley and Mike Cram joining me as well. Crime is an issue that unfortunately touches Canadians in every community, big and small. And despite the rhetoric and the illusion that the Mark Carney Liberals are trying to paint about taking action, we know a year into Mark Carney's government that the results just don't match the rhetoric. Numerous pieces of legislation have not only failed to undo previous bad Liberal policy, but they've in fact made it worse, further weakening penalties and sentencing provisions. So I want to kick this off by turning it over to our new Shadow Minister for Finance, Arpan Khanna, to explain how the Liberals have made the situation worse under Mark Carney and the positive Conservative solutions that will actually get the job done. Arpan?
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, and it's an honor to be here in Saskatchewan, and thanks for the warm hospitality. And Larry and I have been traveling right across this country, coast to coast, meeting with victims, meeting with law enforcement, meeting with stakeholders from right across our country. And we're hearing the exact same thing everywhere we go. Yesterday we had meetings here in Regina, and people are actually scared. They're scared to go outside to the parks. They're scared to, put their kids in different places. There's this worry and this sense of anxiety that crime is now dominating the conversations. And for us, despite what the Liberals are saying, despite Sean Fraser and Mark Carney going around trying to get a victory lap on their illusions on crime, they're the ones that have caused the problems. It is their 11 years of failed Liberal policies like C-75, C-5, the soft on crime, catch and release laws that have caused this chaos on our streets and, quite frankly, have broken our justice system. When you look at the headlines that we're seeing, it sounds like they're out of a Netflix series. Violent shootings happening right across our country. Just a few days ago in Toronto, we saw some of the worst gun crime this country has ever seen. We saw the Salsa Festival in St. Clair, where amongst thousands of Canadians trying to have fun with their families, enjoy the summer festival, these criminals recklessly shot and killed 2 people, injuring 5. But just minutes later, we hear that at a different nightclub a few minutes away from Toronto, there was another shooting. And what's crazy about this story is that the accused had already been in touch with the police. He had a massive criminal record. He had been arrested. He was convicted for torturing someone, torturing them in their home a few years ago. And while he was convicted and found guilty, he was out on bail. Can you believe that? Someone with that kind of criminal record, who is a convicted criminal, out on bail. We hear stories about children being hit with stray bullets in their beds. And so these stories have now become the sad reality of 11 years of Mark Carney and the Liberal government. And despite what they say, and I know they're on a big tour right now, they're going around and wanting a pat on their back, it's their failures. They are to blame. And I could tell you, the ground, we talk to people, they don't feel safe anymore. And that has been our focus for the last couple of years, is to put good, thoughtful policies, good practical solutions, so that these repeat offenders, those that continue to terrorize our communities over and over and over again, are put behind bars. And so in the last parliamentary session, we brought almost 20 criminal justice and public safety bills to the floor of the House of Commons. I brought forward the jail, not bail bill, which focused on locking up these repeat offenders. I also want to add, had my bill been implemented, that one of the shooting criminals that shot up Toronto wouldn't have been out on bail. So we have, on the Conservative side, put forward solutions, while the Liberals are playing politics and driving rhetoric. And that's going to be our focus in the fall when we head back to the Parliament for the fall session. But with that, I want to invite on stage, as Andrew mentioned, my predecessor, but also a former Crown prosecutor who has been on the front lines fighting the good fight of stopping crime in our country, Larry Brock. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arpan, and it's great to be in Regina. Love the province, love the city, but don't like what's happening in this country. And as a former Crown prosecutor, I'm fighting back on 11 years of failed policy and wrong legislation that prioritized criminals over community and victim safety. The importance of today it cannot be overshadowed by the fact that today C-14 becomes law. It's implemented today. So I would encourage all local reporters to talk to some of your local Crown attorneys, talk to your police officers, talk to the police chief, maybe not necessarily today, but a week from today, and ask them this one question. Has C-14 and the so-called bail reform that the Liberals are touting, has that made a difference? Has it meant more violent repeat criminals being detained as opposed to being released to continue to terrorize our Regina streets and Regina victims? I bet you that answer is we haven't seen one difference. And I'll tell you why that answer will be we haven't seen one difference. Because C-14 at its core preserves the principle of restraint. This is what Justin Trudeau and the Liberals brought in 2019. I saw the immediate impact as a practicing Crown attorney in the trenches, in bail court every day, where violent repeat criminals were being released because Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government said to judges, you must release the accused at the earliest opportunity on the least restrictive conditions. We pushed hard as Conservatives during debate and during the study at the Justice Committee to make amendments to C-14, to remove the principle of restraint and to replace that with the principle of community and victim safety when you're dealing with violent repeat criminals. And you know what? The Liberals voted it down. Just like every other common sense solution and amendment to strengthen, to improve the bill. The 20 private member bills that we brought were all designed to strengthen our criminal code, to give police more tools, to give more confidence and trust to the public with our criminal justice system. And you know what? The Liberals shot it down, voted it down each and every time. We are here in Regina to start our truth and realism tour against this grand illusion that C-14 and this Saturday becomes law, C-18, the Protecting Victims Act. We are here to provide the truth as to what will work and what will not. What the Liberals have done with these two particular bills is simply scratched the surface. They have not addressed the core issues, and until such time as will address those core issues, we are going to have problems in communities right across this country.
Thanks for coming, everyone. I just want to bring this back to some local issues, and I want to thank Larry and Arpan for being here because they've been doing Stop the Crime town halls all across Canada. We're going to host another one tonight in our ride-in of Regina Lewvan, so we're excited because 100 people are going to come out and talk about the crime going on in Regina and what they think can do to help it. And there's one example I want to give is in November of 2024, a person convicted of having child exploitation material in our city of Regina was released on bail that day after his criminal hearing. And I think we need common sense legislation that keeps heinous criminals like that behind bars so they can't terrorize our communities. And that's what we're fighting for as Conservatives, and we'd be happy to take any of your questions now.
Yeah, when I cover the legislature, the crime issue comes up there, and the NDP seems to give the impression it's all Scott Moe's fault. So I'm just curious what your take is on this. Is a lot of it, is it, how much of the responsibility is provincial responsibility, or is it mostly federal here?
Well, there's no doubt that it was federal legislation that put in that principle of restraint. That was a Liberal law that told judges that the first consideration before community safety, before victims' rights, had to be the rights of the criminal. So that was federal legislation that did that. Mark Carney has refused to repeal that. He is keeping that provision in place. This weekend, as Larry pointed out, a new piece of legislation that Mark Carney brought in effectively eliminates all mandatory minimums for all but I think 2 or 3 crimes. So he has now given judicial discretion on a whole swath of mandatory minimums. Well, you don't have a mandatory minimum if a judge is allowed to not impose that sentence. I mean, it's contradictory. It's an oxymoron. So those are 2 pieces of federal legislation that Mark Carney has brought in that is making the situation worse. And again, this is an illusion. Mark Carney would love you to believe that he's doing something different. They're actually using your tax dollars to run ads telling Canadians that they're addressing these problems. But when you actually read the legislation, it's keeping in place the very same Liberal laws that caused the problem in the first place.
I'm just wondering.
Nous avons une question en français, alors je vais essayer. Okay. C'est clair que les projets de loi fédéraux ont créé le problème. Et Mark Carney a décidé de garder en place les mêmes provisions que Justin Trudeau a imposées depuis 2019. C14, il y a toujours les provisions où les juges doivent considérer la première chose, les droits des criminels, pas les victimes ou pas la communauté. Mark Carney a décidé de garder en place cette provision. Et avec son autre projet de loi, C16, il a fait la même chose. Il a donné aux juges la discrétion d'ignorer les peines minimales. Ça, c'est les choix fédéraux que Mark Carney a pris.
How long do you keep people locked up for once this is all?
Well, I'll let Arpan or Larry address that.
That's a decision made by a judge. We provide the judges, sometimes with mandatory minimum penalties. We provide the judges also with a maximum ceiling, depending on the nature of the offense. It's hard for me to say in terms of how long do we keep someone in custody. It really depends on their degree of guilt, their degree of remorse, all kinds of factors, their criminal record, but really that is a judicial decision. We provide the tools to the judges to exercise that decision.
You're innocent before proven guilty. How do you square with your proposal with that principle?
The principle of restraint, are you referring to?
Well, just this idea of you're innocent until proven guilty.
That's a basic tenet in our charter. Every Canadian has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Every Canadian has the right to reasonable bail, but reasonable bail does not mean, and has never meant, absolute bail. And the Liberal government has created this atmosphere where absolute bail becomes the default norm in courthouses like here in Regina and courthouses every day across this country.
Repeat offenders that you're targeting?
Violent repeat offenders. If I were to ask the police chief here if he could identify the top 10 violent repeat offenders, he wouldn't even have to think about it. He'd be able to identify their name, where they're living, the nature of their criminal record. Every community has a small list of violent repeat criminals who are largely responsible for committing over 80% of all criminal crimes in this country every year. Our legislation, Jail Not Bail bill, was designed to identify who those repeat violent criminals are and to hold them responsible and to keep them in custody should they commit the same offense over and over again. Because statistics will show when those violent repeat criminals are detained in custody, you know what happens? The crime rate drops.
Just so you know, the police chief here is a woman.
Thank you.
The first ever in the province of Saskatchewan. Just so you know.
That's great to hear.
Strong woman's.
Nous parle aussi d'éviter la sortie conditionnelle des criminels. Est-ce que cela aussi population carcérale?
Mais nous sommes concentrés sur la protection des communautés. La première responsabilité de chaque gouvernement, c'est de protéger les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Ça, c'est sûr. On a vu que quand le gouvernement prit des peines sérieuses, qu'il y a un effet sur la criminalité et la population a baissé. Quand les criminels reçurent le message que hey, si je fais quelque chose comme ça, je dois passer plusieurs années en prison, ils ne font pas les crimes. Ça, c'est le bilan de l'ancien gouvernement conservateur. On a augmenté les peines pour les criminels et on a vu une baisse en criminalité et dans la population dans nos prisons. Maybe I'll just repeat that in English. The question was, are we worried about overpopulation of prisons if you impose all these tougher sentences? We saw with the previous Conservative government that when we increased penalties, it had an effect on crime rates. Crime rates went down when criminals knew they were going to spend serious time in prison. And so that had an effect on the prison population in a good way because criminals stopped committing crime. And that's what today's announcement is all about. You know, when dangerous, we have had two things in this country for generations. We have had the presumption of innocence, but also courts that take into account when you've got dangerous, violent, repeat offenders, people who have long rap sheets of serious convictions, that public safety has to be taken into account. And we've had that ability for judges to keep those offenders behind bars awaiting trial taken away by liberal laws that brought in that principle of restraint and forced judges to consider the rights of criminals ahead of the rights of honest Canadians. And Mark Carney has chosen to keep that in place. So the biggest takeaway from today's message is that while the rhetoric has changed, while the government is running ads, claiming, using your tax dollars to run ads, telling you that they've solved the problem, they have kept on the books the very liberal laws that caused the problem in the first place. Right. Thanks very much. Maybe one more question, then I know we have a few other things to get to.
A question from Toronto, if you don't mind. Central bank says the economic growth has resumed. Do you accept that the technical recession is behind us in Canada?
Well, look, you know, we know that since Mark Carney has been Prime Minister, he has delivered the only G20 country that's in a recession. We know that net job losses are higher under his tenure. Mark Carney's government just told the United Arab Emirates that they had to park $70 billion worth of investments because there is nothing for them to invest in. Okay. I can't even believe those words are coming out of my mouth. We live in a resource-rich province where we want to see projects approved. Mark Carney has chosen to keep Bill C-69, the no new pipelines laws, on the books. He's imposing a massive hike in the industrial carbon tax. And his major projects office hasn't actually done a single thing. There's not one single project that has started and finished the process for the major projects office. Meanwhile, our competitors around the world are getting to yes. We've seen countries that were net importers of energy become net exporters because they figured out a way to get government out of the way to get things built. So again, this is the illusion that Mark Carney is delivering something different than than what the Liberal government has delivered for the last 11 years is just that. It's just an illusion.
Do you have any concerns that recent public disputes between some party members is a distraction right now?
I can just tell you that we're all focused on holding this government to account, and you know, Pierre continues to point out how prices are still going up, crime is still going up. Jobs are continuing leaving. The manufacturing jobs in the latest jobs report just devastating for hardworking men and women across the country in the manufacturing sector. So that's what we're focused on, and we continue to see Canadians responding to that message, and we're going to continue to stay focused on that. I think you had a question, gentlemen, and then we will have to wrap it up.
The shooter that you claim would be in jail and not out on bail if your jail not bail bill was enacted, that's the shooter for the nightclub shooting.
A rebel.
The Salsa Festival, correct? And can you confirm where that shooting took place, and the nightclub and the location?
Yeah, so that one took place at the Rebel nightclub, outside the nightclub, and that person then took a car, he stole a ride share and tried running people over. So it's a different shooting than the one on Salsa.
So he tried to run people over, he didn't shoot anyone?
He did shoot. Yeah. Yeah. And the crazy part is he has a history of smuggling guns, of extortion, of home invasions, yet he was guilty of that, yet was still out on bail awaiting sentencing.
The
claims that crime is rising, that people are scared. I'm not disputing that may be the case, but do you guys have a source? Do you have statistics for the actual rise in crime?
Look, Stats Canada is a great source. I think it's the government's own source. So I encourage all members to take a look at that. 116% increase in violent crime in Canada since this government has taken office. 330% increase in extortion. We never had this kind of crime in our country. Brazen shootings. These criminals are being emboldened by the Liberal policies because they know there are no consequences. It's jail by day, bail by night, and it's the same people over and over again. A crazy stat for you. In Kelowna, the same 15 criminals were responsible for 1,400 crimes in a single year. The same 15. You put them behind bars for being repeat violent offenders, that crime stat goes down, and that's what our focus is going to be on.
Last question for me. I know it depends on the crime. I know it depends on a number of things, and it's up to the judge. But just in terms of changing policies, is there one concrete example? Could we take, for example, like pick a crime simply like, I don't know, assault, and if somebody has done that 3 times, what would the policy change be in terms of, for example, like minimum number of years in jail or bail? Is there a concrete example?
Jail, not bail, is a prime example. But
between the policy right now and what would be the policy if this was enacted?
I appreciate the question. I thank you for the question. Your example, though, is kind of difficult for me to respond to. There's various forms of assault. We have common assault. We have someone spitting on somebody, someone, elbowing somebody could constitute an assault. There's even someone who raises a fist to somebody without actually landing could constitute an assault. And then you go range from assault all the way to aggravated assault, which is like one level below that of a homicide. So it's very difficult for me in that particular example to provide some context as to what the Conservative policy would be. But the importance of today really is to highlight the fact that the illusion and the narrative that Mark Carney and Sean Fraser, his justice minister, are spreading across the country is misleading, it's false, it is wrong. They had every opportunity for the last 4 to 5 years to listen to every major stakeholder in this country, and I wouldn't be surprised if the police chief of your police service also raised concerns. I know your premier raised concerns. I know your mayor has raised concerns to the federal government, and it fell on deaf ears for years. So they reformed bail. Everything was working fine pre-2015 until this Liberal government came into power. And now after 11 years, they are chipping away, slowly chipping away at the harm and the chaos that they have created over 11 years. We're saying it's not enough. Community safety should never be a partisan issue. This Liberal government has made it so.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you.